Hello, everyone. Welcome to AMA number 112 with Enhanced. Today we have CEO Max with us from the Enhanced team as they de-SPAC and go public here in the United States via NASDAQ. Just to kind of a little bit give you a background who we have here. Martin is a co-founder and CEO of Enhanced, formerly Enhanced Limited, the parent of the Enhanced Games. He took over operational leadership from Dr. Aaron D'Souza, one of the other founders. Before Enhanced, Martin was a co-founder and CEO of Bitfield, a Bitcoin mining company that was acquired by Northern Data Group for 400 million or pounds or euros, I don't recall. Early in his career, euros, yeah, pretty amazing. Early in his career, he worked in technology investment banking at Morgan Stanley, and this company was founded in 2023 along with Chairman Christian, which we'll have an interview down the road. Welcome, Martin. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Where are we having you here from? I know you'll be in Vegas at the end of the month, but where are you right now?
Yeah, that's right. But right now I'm dialing in from our offices in New York. We have our offices right on top of Madison Park. And so that's where I'm at.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone that's showing up today from Reddit, StockTwits, Discord, and X. As you know, we have over 40 sponsors, and Enhanced Limited Enhanced Games is one of our sponsors. Not only will we be doing this AMA and interview live here, we'll be doing a live AMA on site at the end of May as well. Jumping into some questions, Max, you went from a technology investment banking at Morgan Stanley to Bitcoin mining to Enhanced Games. Can you walk us through that journey and what's the common thread amongst all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I studied, business as many people do, and then started my career in investment banking at Morgan Stanley, where it was in the tech team because I've always had a big passion for technology companies and especially companies that experience high growth. And so I was very grateful for my time there. I got a lot of overview into the sector and the space. As I said, generally a big personal interest of mine being technology. After I left investment banking, after working there for a few years, Christian Angermeyer, who is a co-founder and chairman of Enhanced, and I actually founded that Bitcoin mining business together. And that goes back a few years prior because in university, I already had my first startup. I was introduced through that startup when I was capital raising for it to Christian. And Christian at the time didn't invest though. It was not something that he would consider interesting for his investment thesis. However, he really became my mentor since then. And so after I left Morgan Stanley, we founded Bitfield together, which was in the Bitcoin mining space. We scaled it over 1.5 years. We were very excited about the time that was all happening. We started it in the middle of COVID, actually, and we raised enough capital to, at the time, place the largest order globally ever to that date for Bitcoin mining equipment, and then built out data center capacity throughout North America and Europe. And when we started it, Bitcoin was trading under 10K, and we were in 2020 as well as in 2021 experiencing great kind of tailwinds for the industry by just the increase in the Bitcoin price. And by the end of 2021, we sold the business to Northern Data, which is a global data center business. Northern Data was our operational partner who would build the data centers for us. We would own and buy the equipment. And they wanted to vertically integrate. So sold the business to them, vertically integrated. And after the integration was done and my job de facto at Northern Data was done, I left them to work on other exciting businesses again. And that's how I then came to Enhanced. And have ever since, for the last 3 years, dedicated day and night to building out Enhanced.
That's amazing. I'm always impressed by serial entrepreneurs, especially when they begin young, whether it's in high school and whether it's university. It seems like every step prepares you for the next step, and you develop these excellent relationships, like meeting Angermeyer, that helps you see a bigger picture and form these wonderful relationships. How did the exit from Bitfield prepare you to build and lead Enhanced?
It's a great question. So we were experiencing hyper growth, I would say, at the time when we were building out Bitfield, right? Not just in terms of team, but sizable operations as well. And when we sold the business, it was actually something that prepared me very well for the de-SPAC process now, is the transaction in how we sold the business and how efficiently we got that deal done. And I think what was great is to, both with prior to selling the company as well as the integration after, having let me be, an integral part of a hyper-growing startup. So really adopt that mentality. But then on the other side, after we got integrated, see and function in a larger organization and manage a larger organization too, right? I was part of the management team of Northern Data once we got acquired. But then we also went through a more challenging time after we sold the business. We'd received massive headwinds then in the Bitcoin space. Energy prices skyrocketed, mostly driven to the Russia-Ukraine war at the time, and having to restructure a lot of the business. So I feel like even though this all happened in the span of a couple of years only, we've really seen a lot of things that can challenge an organization. And we've dealt with the processes back in the day, I think, very well. And so I think that put me in a position now where I can very comfortably lead Enhanced into any headwind that we'll be facing here going forward.
Amazing. For those, in our audience today, I just want to have a little bit of background on the SPAC transaction. The SPAC that's taking Enhanced public is called a Paradise Acquisition Corp, APAD. That's the ticker, and it's still trading under that ticker until near the end of this week. Definitive business agreement was in November 2025. Enterprise value of 1.2 billion. Trust size 200 million. Obviously, the gross at closing will depend on the redemption, and they do have a safe private placement of 40 million to make sure there's sufficient money for the new holdco. Going forward, it looks like you have a lot of crazy people in your orbit. You have Christian in your orbit, Peter Thiel, Brian Johnson. How have these relationships helped shape the culture and direction of Enhanced Games?
Yeah, so I wouldn't call any of them crazy. I think what these three people are absolutely incredible visionaries that have successfully over and over founded companies that became very successful. I think all three of them as well are industry defining in the work that they've been doing in the past. And I'm very excited about being in a position to, have such people in our orbit as Enhanced as an organization to help us shape our vision, to help us put the right things in place to make sure that we have a company that operates on such a level that we can achieve the ambitious targets that we set ourselves. And so that I find very exciting. I think Christian particularly, with his biotech background, having founded multiple companies in the biotech space, understanding that space extremely well, successfully, partnering with them both from incorporations to becoming public across the capital development. It's been very exciting, and I think the success there that he's seen speaks for itself. Similarly, I think with Peter, one of the best investors we have on this planet, right? Peter is though a little bit more, call it passive as an investor. He was a very early investor, but rather passive throughout. And then Brian, overall, is just a great human being that I think couldn't be more aligned to enhance its mission than he already is. And Brian, not just, through the work that he's doing, really working in the same area, in the same industry, bringing healthcare, making healthcare more important to people and showcasing by himself through the work that he's doing through himself to people what is possible to improve your health. But then also welcoming him now at the end of May for the games as one of our broadcast experts. He's going to be the first expert on human enhancement ever at a sporting event, which is great to have him there and have his expertise to talk about the protocols that the athletes have been taking, the impacts that those protocols had on their not just performance but also their health is something really exciting.
The reason I was saying crazy, they're all iconoclasts. These people, including Elon, are forming whole industries on their own. That's where I meant by crazy, positive kind of way.
That's probably more how you could phrase it.
Yeah. So some people might ask, hey, Max, why are you guys choosing a SPAC? Why didn't you guys go via a traditional IPO? There's some downside to SPACs, like redemptions and other issues that people sometimes worry about, having guaranteed capital at the end of when the transaction closes. Why SPAC rather than IPO?
Yeah, look, the answer is very simple. It was just speed of execution for us. Once we decided that we'll take Enhanced public, it was for us about what's the timeline that goes along with it. We knew that we had the games coming up now at the end of May in Las Vegas. And what we wanted to make sure is that we're trading as our own company prior to that. And throughout of the SPAC, we were much more efficient in getting the process done. You're absolutely right with redemptions, right? You can never know exactly what's going to happen or not. How we mitigated that risk was through this private placement that you mentioned previously. In that private placement, we raised actually this amount of $40 million already by the time that we announced the business combination agreement. So from a capital perspective, we were sufficiently financed to go through the year without needing to rely on no redemptions in this bag. And so that was really the main mitigation point on that front. And then similarly, right, it's been 6 months since we roughly announced that we are going together with APAD, and we're now listing on the New York Stock Exchange this Friday in 2 days under ENHA. And with the government shutdown that has happened, that put significant, timeline kind of mix-ups in the play. So I'm very excited about still what the team has achieved in this short period of time to get the deal done and get us traded by Friday on the New York Stock Exchange.
Amazing. No, we're watching. I'm very excited. Like you mentioned, one of the advantages of SPAC vehicles is the speed you can go to market, and especially with the games at the end of May, this is something that needs to be done this way. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
The 5 areas in your documents you guys have earmarked the capital for includes athlete recruitment, game production, clinical support, telehealth products. If you had to rank them, where the money actually moves the needle the most, what order would you put them in?
Look, that's a good question. I think they're all of them are essential to us as a business and being successful. But in the way that we lead this organization, our most important asset are the people that stand behind it. What I always say in a comparison is, we're not pulling oil out of the ground, and we're not producing ourselves, anything, etc. That is a value in itself. For us, people is really the biggest asset that we have as an organization. That goes both for the athletes as well as the people that recruit those athletes, that make the games work, that set up the products business, that work with our suppliers in all different areas to make sure that what we set out for ourselves, we achieve. And so for me, what moves the needle the most is really our people that we have here working with us daily on Enhanced. Did I lose you there? So if someone can still see me, I think you're frozen. I can't hear you. But maybe for people watching on the other areas of the business, right? I think one key differentiator for us that really moves the needle a lot in the past and what's going to continue to move the needle is all of the clinical work that we've been doing with the athletes. The main thesis for the Enhanced Games, as many of you maybe know already, is that there's no banned substance regulations other than what is illegal under the law. That means that compared to traditional sports where there is banned substances regulations, enhanced athletes are actually empowered to take FDA-approved substances under a doctoral supervision in a highly clinically and medically regulated environment to make sure that if they choose to enhance, they can do it safely. And so we've invested a ton of capital over the past 2 years into setting up a clinical study with a health regulator in Abu Dhabi, their Department of Health, as well as the biggest hospital in the UAE, SSMC Hospital, on setting up a clinical study on which the enhanced medical program can run and make sure that everything is in place from a medical and scientific perspective to make sure that the athletes can enhance in the best way and highest way possible. We're actually not trialing anything new in the clinical study. What we're looking at is all the substances that are already approved. So these are substances that are being prescribed from doctors to patients every single day. And so we're just investigating in this study environment. We put that, imposed it on ourselves to make sure that we operate on the highest clinical and medical standards that there are globally. Sorry, I just went a little bit freestyle here, but since you dropped I just expand on a few more items.
Yeah, the signal dropped in the building, but I went on the backup, so thanks. I appreciate that. Because we continue to have our audience, so that's great. Thank you, everyone. In May 24, at Resorts World in Las Vegas, describe what the experience will actually feel like for people that are attending in person. I'll be there. Many of my friends will be there. We're very excited. How is it going to be? This first games like this. We've all the young people in my age group have heard about this. Coming down the pipeline, and now we're realizing, okay, wow, it's happening now. So can you just, Max, describe the experience, how it's going to be like?
The event's going to be crazy. And I mean that. It's going to be an absolute entertainment spectacle. So the way that we've built these games is completely to detach ourselves from any event in track, swimming, or weightlifting that you know to date. Like, we're not following any other model from any other league that has these 3 sports. But what we've built this event after is actually the Super Bowl, We wanted to make this the entertainment spectacle that the people are used to and that the people want to see. So everything is happening in one night. The total programming of sporting events is just going to be around 4 hours. We actually have an opening music performance and we have a closing performance by the rock band, The Killers. We have an after party. We have a ton of ancillary events around it. So really think of this like completely modeled after the Super Bowl. 2,500 people are going to be there in person live in what we call our competition complex. And that is also an arena like no one's ever seen it before. So for the people interested in seeing how it looks already, it's currently being built. It's at Resorts World in Las Vegas. And on our Instagram, you will find, tons of updates on the process of building it and how it's all coming together. And the competition complex is also one of its kind. So you will have not a circular track that the people are running on, but you have a straight sprint track because we're only doing the 100 meters on the track. Then you don't have like 8 or 9 lanes, but you only have 6. We have a 50-meter Olympic-sized pool, but not with 8, 9 lanes, but with 4.
Sure.
Reason for us doing all of these things is because we're very much aware that, track, swimming, and weightlifting are not sports that the people are used to watching as much as, for example, football or basketball. You cannot really watch 9 people swim at the same time. It's super difficult to follow. What it allowed us as well is by condensing the size of the pool, condensing the size of the track, and putting the weightlifting area in front of them is to have kind of a stadium that really grabs the competition area. So it's going to be a full house. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere at the games. 2,500 people live. And we have a big focus on people to come to amplify our reach. What's the most important thing for us in these first games is A, that the athletes are healthy and safe and performing better than they ever have. But then beyond that, the real focus is to amplify what we're doing. As you knew about the Enhanced Games already, your friends knew about them. Quite interestingly enough, we did a study at the end of last year where 60% of the people surveyed knew about the Enhanced Games already. 60% of randomly surveyed people knew about Enhanced, and that kind of brand awareness is absolutely incredible for a company that's never put on these games before.
So how do you guys do that? Because I don't remember seeing anything, but I knew about it. You know what I mean? It was very subtle.
I think it's because we've been picked up a lot in the press, and most of the content that's being produced about us is actually UGC content. So more than 85% of the views that we're gathering on socials is coming from UGC. And so people just talk about it a lot. And the reason why that is the case is, I think, because the idea in itself is very polarizing. What we're doing is we're allowing athletes to take substances that would previously get them banned in sports. Now, if we were running this is something that people immediately have an opinion on. What rarely happens is that people say, okay, let me learn more before I form an opinion. Most people either say, I like it or I don't like it. And in many cases as well, they either love it or hate it. So the people are very strongly and emotionally connected to just subject matter, which just drives a ton of engagement for us, a ton of pickup in the press. We're also, revolutionizing sports, something that many, many people love. And particularly the Olympic system is being challenged by the work that we're doing. And so this is a system that's been around for more than 100 years, never had anyone even dare to challenge them. And we're approaching it with a completely different approach that is much more science forward, much more in line with how we've developed as a society over the past 3 to 5 years in terms of longevity and wellness. And that I think is a very interesting topic to cover and talk about for many, many people.
Yeah, no, I can talk about this for hours, to be honest with you, because like you said, it's polarizing, but in a good kind of way. People want to talk about it, right? I'll be honest with you, a lot of young people, they don't watch the Olympics as much as they used to do before, previous decades. They just want something that's different, right? Even where we live, there's these games that are coming in right now where it's armored and MMA. So these people are wearing armored outfits, clothings, and they're doing fighting. You know what I mean? So these are the kind of stuff people want, and totally I could see people picking this up. And one day I could totally see this challenging the Olympics in terms of viewership. Talk about viewership now. How are other people going to see this? Is there a dedicated group that's broadcasting it? Is it going to be on YouTube? How are you guys going to broadcast it?
Yeah, our biggest distribution channel for now is YouTube and all of our other channels, Kick, Twitch, etc. So what that means is that the content is available to be viewed for people for free. We've had a ton of interest, from people that would put the content behind a paywall, but we didn't want to do that. We want to make the games accessible for everyone without any barriers to watch. What we might do is we add more platforms on top of that. But for now, people can tune in on YouTube. and other streaming platforms on our own channels. But what a big focus for us is as well is clipping and social distribution. I think for us, if I look at the overall views, the 72 hours past the games, 95% of the views that we have generated is going to come from socials. So we have adopted this mindset from the very beginning, and we've built the games around this mindset as well. So every event that we're doing is shorter than a minute, so that it perfectly fits into a reel, shorts, or TikTok. And so therefore, like, our social distribution strategy is really the biggest.
No, that's really smart, and it's going to help a lot of people see this, right, by putting on YouTube. And now diving a little bit into the business itself, we have three commercial pillars: the sports property, which we discussed, the live enhanced telehealth platform as well, which maybe we can get into a little bit detail, and the proprietary clinical data that you guys will be generating. Which one do you think will be the greatest revenue generator? In 5 years, do they kind of feed into each other? Can you explain that to us?
No, very happy to. So I think the two big ones are really the revenues that we generate from sports, and then the live enhanced telehealth platform. The clinical data we're actually not going to sell. It's just going to inform a lot on our own product offering and prescription guidelines in the telehealth space. In the sporting side, just quickly to wrap up what's part of those revenues. The sporting side is mostly driven in year one by partnership revenue. This means all of the partners that come in, that sponsor the games, that work with our athletes, etc. The media rights are going to be potentially sold in the future years to come because of what I just said in terms of we want to make our media available for everyone to watch for free. But these are going to be the predominant two drivers for revenues on the sporting side. Tickets and merch, not so much. Tickets, why? Because we're not selling the tickets. We're giving all of the tickets away for free. And then merch is just going to be a percentage-wise rather smaller portion of the overall sports revenues. On the telehealth side, or the Live Enhanced platform in general, it's really the revenue from the consumer products that we have. And the consumer products portfolio that we've built is there to give people the opportunity to live enhanced. But if you think about what does it mean to be enhanced, it's entirely subjective. It means something different for every individual. For some people, it might be just taking multivitamins and doing cold plunge and sauna. For other people like myself, it might be injectable hormone therapy. Where you sit on that spectrum is entirely up to you. So what we've done is we've built a product suite to cover as much of it as possible. So now our product suite covers from anything from like supplements to prescription drugs with a big focus on peptides. That's really the space that we're most excited about for the next few years to come. But then also testosterone replacement therapy for men, hormone replacement therapy for women, certain other longevity drugs, etc. These are the two big revenue contributors in terms of how they relate to each other. To answer your question, sorry, like for the background. In year one, what we're guiding with is roughly 50-50 in terms of revenue contribution from both of these businesses. But in 3 years from now already, you'll see that the telehealth business is going to very much outperform the sporting side of things and most likely make up, say, 2/3 of our overall top line.
Very interesting. The first time I saw the business model when I was going through the investor deck, quickly it struck me as like this is like hims hers with like another layer of intelligence plus like extreme sports Red Bull style. You know what I mean? That's what I think the vision that I got.
I think that's a great analogy. I think when you just said Red Bull, it makes a ton of sense because Red Bull does very similar what we're doing. Red Bull has a performance-enhancing drink that they're selling, which is driving most of their revenue. In order to promote that, they do sports. They own sports teams, they do sporting events, and they have a 24/7, 365 social strategy where they're promoting their performance-enhancing drink that they're selling. They make money on the sports, and it sufficiently spins off enough cash to keep the sports side of the business going, but it also serves the purpose of promoting their product. And very similarly for us, right? As you said, the added intelligence layer is really what differentiates us, I think, in terms of quality, the biggest from other businesses in the space. Because all of the work that we're doing with the athletes, I actually just explained to the audience while you were dropped in terms of how we monitor the enhanced medical program, the athletes, their protocols, etc. Through the enhanced medical protocol, what we're doing is we're generating so much data from the athletes that's constantly informing our own product offering and our prescription guidelines of those products. And if you want to do another analogy there is think about it like Formula One. When the engineers in the Formula One team develop the Formula One car, That's really at the forefront of scientific innovation and technology. But the Formula One car is never going to get mass produced. But what they learn in developing the Formula One car, in some form of derivative, is going to trickle down into the road car production a few years down the line. So, for example, the anti-blockage system that you have in every car today comes from motor racing. The pedals for shifting, they come from motor racing. And so all of the work that we do with the athletes constantly improves also our own product offering and prescription guidelines. But think about it like this: what helps an athlete break a world record or beat their personal best at 35 compared to when they were 22 is way too complicated for an average Joe like myself in terms of my protocol. But what the work that we do with the athletes constantly improves what we can offer to consumers. Mm-hmm. And that's really, from a quality of product perspective, such a big difference. And then if you think about other companies in the telehealth space, right, in terms of customer growth, really your cost of acquiring a new customer is one of the most important KPIs to monitor in that space. What we've seen is by having athletes become ambassadors, become advocates of the products that they've been taking, about the protocols, how they've helped and shaped their lives, we see a much, much lower customer acquisition cost than anyone else in the market. Because why? The athletes are super authentic, genuine in what they say, and the performance increase and the health benefits that they've received from being enhanced themselves is all measurable. The performance you can measure, and you see the personal bests, the world records. That's the proof in the pudding. The health data you also see. So it doesn't become more authentic and genuine than the athletes actually on their own behalf speaking about the products that we have. And so we don't need to buy, big Super Bowl ads. We don't need to buy big brand partnerships with, ex-athletes, et cetera, et cetera. We are core at our sports. Everyone in telehealth space is trying to get in front of a sports audience. That's who we are as a core.
Mm-hmm. No, this makes total sense. You guys are using the clinical trial data from these athletes to inform your consumer products, and there's no lying behind it. There's no, you don't need to sell it, because you could see clearly the enhancement is done for these athletes in terms of how they look, how well they're doing, and the records they're beating, right? That's I think that's going to be a successful formula. You guys also have George Church, a Harvest geneticist in your team. How is he involved? What is he doing?
Yeah, so George is a member of our scientific commission. We have 2 independent commissions that monitor anything on the clinical, medical, and scientific side. Mm-hmm. We have an independent scientific commission and we have an independent medical commission. The main objective of the independent scientific commission was to help us set up the study, the clinical study in the enhanced medical program. And the independent medical commission makes sure that all the medical screenings that the athletes undergo are done properly, and they determine whether an athlete is healthy and safe to compete. And maybe just to elaborate for just 1 minute on this, mm-hmm. A lot of people think that there's no testing at the enhanced games. That's not quite true. What we're not doing is a punitive testing system that is only interested in whether an athlete is cheating or not. What we've switched is from this punitive testing system is to a testing system that is all centered about the athlete's health and their safety to compete. Because I went through this before with the audience, what the athletes can take is FDA-approved substances under a doctor's supervision. Now, in order to, for example, prevent them from overdosing, we have medical screenings over time that look at a gazillion different biomarkers of the athletes, images of the heart, the brain, other organs, their musculoskeletal analysis, to make sure that we deem the athletes to be healthy and safe to compete. And that's really the safety layer on making sure that no one is abusing substances and not competing in games when they're not safe to do so. And for safety to compete, what that even stretches to is, for example, an athlete having the flu. In 2024, in the Olympic 200-meter final for the men's, Noah Lyles, American sprinter, had actually COVID while he ran the race. He completely collapsed after the race, had to get carried out in a wheelchair afterwards. Whether that was super safe to compete with COVID is really a big question mark. So what we just wanted to do with all the medical screenings, that we start from even before the athlete signs with us, just to up to the games, is make sure that all the athletes are healthy and safe to compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that incident in 2024. And I was questioning whether his team knew about it, the coaches, whether, whoever is regulating who can compete or not knew about it, And I was very surprised at the end, that actually this whole process happened. So for sure, some sort of medical surveillance is important in these kind of games. You mentioned that enhanced games will be held annually in Las Vegas this year. Are you guys going to change the venue every year? How is 2027 going to look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for now, we really feel comfortable with the setup that we have, both in terms of location as well as the sports that we're doing. I think for the next few years to come, the games themselves are going to stay in this Super Bowl style format. What we're not going to see is us adding a gazillion different sports to host a tournament. It's always going to be that Super Bowl style format for now. Mm-hmm. And I think also with the number of athletes that we have, 50 athletes, we feel very comfortable. The three sports, why do we like them so much? Because track, swimming, and weightlifting have historically been the sports that define what the human body is capable of. They all have also objectively measurable performance, so that you can hard measure the data and the performance increases because there's no judges involved. And so I think the games for now are going to stay in that format. Obviously, they're going to improve as we do them again and again. But then in terms of other sporting content that we're adding throughout the year, there we'll venture into other sports. So what I'm really excited about is, for example, long-distance triathlons, bike racing, and marathon running, etc. There's so many other cool sports that the people can relate with, which are sports that we want to go into. Because the sports themselves are super exciting, but like coming back to the Red Bull analogy, what do the viewers get from watching the games as well? Hopefully they get inspired by seeing enhanced athletes being healthier than they've ever been and performing better than they ever have, to be inspired to think about what can enhancements do for my own life. And so what we're thinking about is how do we make it more relatable? Because if an athlete breaks a world record, that's literally the most unrelatable thing in the world. When Christian Golomev, a Greek swimmer that swims with enhanced, broke the 50-meter freestyle world record last year, first time an openly enhanced athlete broke a world record. When he did that, it was like he was healthier than he's ever been. He was performing better, obviously, than any other human being. And he broke the world record by 2/100ths of a second. And that, what I sometimes show people is, I'll show you here as well, is if you pull up your stopwatch, he broke it by 2/100ths of a second. So if you pull up your stopwatch and you just quickly double press, this was 0.16, right? So 8 times as much as the margin that he broke the world record by. So it's completely unrelatable. Now, we have athletes that are going to break world records, which is super exciting, but we have a second tiering of athletes as well, which are athletes that are coming out of retirement, have been maybe retired for a few years, and coming back to break their personal best from when they were in their prime through the help of enhancements. And so, for example, we have a female swimmer, Megan Romano, from the US. She was a 2-time world champion when she was in her prime. She's now 35, came out of retirement, but now at 35, Megan, a 2-time world champion, at 35 is swimming quicker than she did in her 20s. And that's relatable. And so we're looking also to add, more sports that the people can relate more with, stories that the people can relate more with, to think about their own health differently and inspire them to think about what can enhancements do for my life.
For sure. People really like authenticity, especially the younger generation. And I'm really they're interviewing these athletes, in their lives and what they're going through, some of their, maybe troubles they're having before, they've tried some of these products to enhance them to beat these world records. Taking a slight pivot, you're going, well, not a big pivot, you're going public at a moment where we're seeing record number of people on GLP-1, on products from Hims and Hers, looking at peptides, with longevity tech, performance medicine, and all of that in the minds of a lot of people these days. What keeps you the most excited?
I think what keeps me most excited is the fact that people start thinking about their health differently, right? If you just look at demographic trends, people are taking care of their health, not just at 60 anymore, but starting at 40, in their 30s already. Younger generations drink less, they do exercise more, they smoke less. People are thinking about their health differently. And I think enhancements, especially if you look at the peptide space, are left, right, and center all over the place. People are glorifying unsupervised and unsafe substances that are getting ordered from abroad. No one has real quality control over them and are injecting themselves with it because the demand is just so high. That's completely unsafe. And without the medical supervision in place, people should not be going down these routes. So what I'm very excited about is, coming to the market with an opportunity that makes enhancements safe for people. One thing in sports why we allow banned substances, like FDA-approved substances that would otherwise be banned, is because whether there's rules on banned substances or not, athletes are cheating anyways. There's a lot of research that shows that 43% of Olympians actually admit to using banned substances, but only 1% is getting caught. Now, why is that the case? Because they're taking newly developed drugs that are not well researched, and they take additional drugs on top of that, those masking agents, to hide what they're taking in the first place. That is kind of similar to what's happening in the peptide space right now, with unsupervised use of unsafe substances. That is just dangerous. The people are doing it anyways, though, because they have this intrinsic desire to do it. But so what we're doing is both in sports and in the consumer business, providing a pathway to people, both athletes and general consumers, under which they can make it safe. You actually don't need to experiment with the funkiest peptides that now this one shredded influencer is talking about. That's completely unnecessary. All of the substances that make you perform better, protect yourselves better from injuries, recover quicker, all of those substances are already FDA-approved substances that can be given and prescribed to you under a doctor's supervision. And that's how you make it safe. And so this is really what I'm most excited about providing really this safe and informed approach to people's health, and then in a very, very personalized way. Just like we're doing it for the athletes. Every athlete is on a different protocol. The protocols for the athletes are determined by A, who are they as an individual? What's your biological baseline? Maybe, for example, some people like milk, others are lactose intolerant. What's your biological baseline? But then also, which event are you doing? Are you running the 100-meter sprint, or are you running the marathon? Depending on what you're doing, a different skill set is required to be excellent. Therefore, also the protocols to help you become the best you can be are also very different. And this is the same for the general consumers. Am I a 25-year-old woman that's training for a marathon, or am I a 65-year-old guy that's looking for more energy to take my grandkids to the playground and play with them? Depending on who I am as an individual and what my personal objectives are, there are other protocols that help me get there and keep me there. And so really now thinking about that, not just the safe provision of these pathways to getting enhanced, but then also that truly personalized approach that is so much informed by the work that we do with athletes is really what I'm so excited about.
Mm-hmm. No, that's amazing. People know about peptides, but the problem is they don't know how each one works, how to guarantee the performance of the peptide, whether it's safe, and whoever figures out a way that's transparent, medically supported, to provide information on these peptides and show how it improves or helps you in different ways, that company will win, and maybe it's going to be enhanced. So
I agree.
So that's now we're going to head into our last question, which is, what is one question you wish interviewers would ask you more about the enhanced that nobody has asked yet? We like asking this question because obviously we're not mind readers. There's no enhanced drugs to make us mind readers yet anyways. So we're asking you, Max, what question would you like someone to ask you about the enhanced gains?
So I think one question, like, what do you want for the general consumers, and how are you going to impact society? And what does the work that you do impact society? I think that's something that people get very, and I mean, we're still a young company, we still have a long way to go. We still have the first games to deliver. We still have to, continue to build out our consumer business. We already have great products available, but we continue to do that. But I think what the people are not thinking about as much is the real impact we can have on millions of people's lives. Because by living enhanced, what you're not just doing is you're not just taking substances just for the sake of taking them. Most people that I speak to that are getting enhanced the right way, do you know what they also take care of? Their sleep, their exercise, their nutrition. These are the core 3 pillars of longevity. If we just have an impact, by more people living enhanced and taking care of these 3 pillars, we have such a positive impact on general population's health. And if you think about most governments and their budget allocations, and the biggest problems in budget discussions is mostly in the medical side. And so think about it like this. What if what we see from the athletes, the biggest benefits of enhancements are recovery and injury prevention? Adopt this mindset, recovery and injury prevention for general population. Less people getting injured, and if they get injured, they recover quicker. What kind of a lift on the healthcare system we can have? Second one, if the people are at, and this is now a little bit more longevity, but I think in general, it's very different with enhanced rather than just life or health expansion. If people, at 60, some headlines that I've been reading over the past few weeks were 60 is the new 40. But what does that actually mean in practice if this were true? If 60 is the new 40, it means not just that people are feeling better, but what does it mean on their work output? What does that mean in terms of the work span that people have, that they can still stay at 67 excited about working and adding 1, 2, 3 more years to their careers, which just has a massive impact on our GDP. And so these are just like the general societal benefits I think that we as an organization are very, very excited about through the work that we're doing, because we can have a really positive impact on millions of people's lives and steer a great positive, societal development through this.
Mm-hmm. No, that is very valuable insight, Max. With our society, a lot of people just don't even have those basics right. Like you said, sleeping well, exercising, and nutrition. But giving these people a support and a public way of enhancing their life by talking about different ways that they can help themselves, hopefully, not only will it help the person themselves, but help our society and overall gross national product. Thank you so much, Max, today. And thank you, everyone that is here from Reddit, StockTwits, and all our other socials. Just to summarize today, we have had Max here answering some questions for us to kind of give us bigger clarity on this transaction, Paradise Acquisition Corp, ticker symbol APAD, for the next few days. At the end of the week, it'll be enhanced ticker ENHA. It's a blank check company, 1.2 billion enterprise value with the enhanced games at the end of this month. Thank you so much, Max. I hope to see you there in Vegas in a few weeks, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.